Welcome to Fitzdog Radio. I am heading out with my wife tonight. It is our 22nd anniversary. And we knew each other for 3 years. So it's 25 years that I've been with this fucking... I'm kidding. She's the greatest. I can't even pretend to say a bad word about her. I don't deserve her. That's what she keeps telling me. She's lovely. I'm going to throw a move on her tomorrow night. I'm getting all worked up for it. You know, doing push-ups and sit-ups, some wind sprints, eating a lot of peanut butter. I'm ready. Ready for a crazy lovemaking session on the anniversary. Got reservations at this great restaurant on Abbot Kinney in Venice, Italian place called Piccolo. And I'm playing golf with Mike Gibbons, and he asked me to play, and I go, I can't play golf at 4 o'clock. It's the anniversary. And he goes, send her for a massage. So I thought, this is why you're divorced and I'm married. And then I said to Aaron, I go, how would you like a massage tomorrow? So it worked. He's a genius. I'm sending Aaron to get a 1-hour massage while I go play golf. And then we will head down to Piccolo, get some Italian food, which we can walk to from our house down through all the walk streets, past the Bougainvillea and all the pretty night jasmine. And, it's going to be lovely. Kids are both going out. House to ourselves. Oh, should be good. No gift. I think the massage is the gift. I'll get a card. I'll write something corny in the card. I usually write her a poem. That's right. I write poetry. And what else is going on? I got I was just on Rogan, Joe Rogan this week. I don't know if you guys heard that. If you want to tune in, that's up there. It was a fun trip. It's nice because he flies you in first class, puts you in the best fucking hotel in town, and limo at your disposal wherever you want to go while you're in town. I was in town for 3 days, 2 nights. Did a lot of fun shit. I did Kill Tony Hinchcliffe's show, which has always been fun, but was insane in Austin. There was just a lot of drugs and a lot of different kinds of freaky Austin weird people. Weird in a good way, like a good mix. People eating mushrooms and smoking pot and drinking this peanut butter whiskey that they seem to have from a sponsor. And we went up and we had all kinds of adventures. There was a guy in a wheelchair who's got Lou Gehrig's disease, and they hauled him up on stage, and he did an Andrew Dice Clay as a paraplegic. Para? No. Para. Quadra? He's plegic. He's not able to... Actually, I didn't do a full body scan. I'm not sure what was wrong with this guy, but he doesn't have use of his stuff. But he was funny as shit. I should remember his name. I should give him a shout out. Although he doesn't really need it. I think he's doing pretty well with the Kill Tony show. And there was a girl who came. There's another guy on the show. There's an Asian guy who comes on the show every week. I don't know if this is some kind of a penance for Tony Hinchcliffe after his little run-in with another Asian comic on stage. They tried to cancel him. Turns out you can't cancel Tony Hinchcliffe. And so he brings this guy on every week, and the guy is this kind of nerdy, funny, very funny Chinese guy. And then Tony asked if there was a girl that would come on stage and make out with him. So a girl came up and flashed her tits, pierced nipples. She's been around the block, and she made out with him. And she's got one of those pages that women share with men for money. I forget what it's called. And then she was asked by Tony if she would make love to the young gentleman from China. And she agreed. And she said, well, first I should ask my date. I'm on a date tonight. So they bring the date on stage, and he's this kind of like, how do you describe him other than Austin? Got beat up by the fucking paintbrush of Austin. And he said he was into it, but he wanted to be in on it. So it was a three-way, a Kavanaugh triangle, the Devil's Triangle, they call it, that three-way. So sure enough, anyway, the madness ensues. The crowd is going crazy. And then we're in the green room after the show, and the Chinese guy comes in, and it turns out he just had sex with the girl in a janitor closet. And the boyfriend wasn't asked to participate, and he was upset. And so the Chinese guy was a little nervous and kind of hiding out in the green room from him. And I thought, and the guy lives in his van, this Asian comic, lives in his fucking van. So this is a dream for him. He quit his job so he could live in a van and become a stand-up comedian. And now he's making out with chicks and broom closet sex, and he's on Tony's podcast, which I'm sure has given him a big profile in that Austin area. And so, anyway, it was fun. It was fun. And then I did Rogan the next day, it was good. I didn't feel like I was that sharp. It's 3 hours, and I don't know if I was jet lagged or what, but I felt like it was good, but I wasn't bringing the heat, I don't think. I think people liked it. I got no complaints. I don't go on Reddit. God fucking no. I don't fuck with Reddit. I don't look at it. I don't want to know what it says. I think there's a lie. I don't think that's how real people think and behave. I think it's a cesspool of negativity and people that are trying to stand out by being meaner than the next person, and people trying to empower themselves by having these strong opinions they probably don't even believe. I don't know. I made the mistake of going on a couple times in the past, and I did not. But this was my 22nd time on Rogan, and I don't know at this point. For some people, you can go on Rogan, like my friend Tom O'Neill, who we talked about on the show, went on and his book blew up. But I don't know if your 22nd time on the show does anything, except for it's a fucking great hang. I had a blast with Joe. We shot some pool for a couple hours after doing the podcast, and then that night met up again and did a show and hung out after the show. It was a long day. And a lot of good memories. Met a lot of cool people down there. Went to the opening of this new restaurant. Apparently, the top restaurant in Austin, the owner just opened a new one, and it's called, what was it called? Oh, Jay Carver. And we were there for the opening night. And we got invited to the opening night. And I was there with Adam Egget, who used to be the booker for the Comedy Store, who's going to be booking Joe's Club whenever it opens. And he's a dear friend, so we had a blast. I think Tony hooked it up, but the guy who runs the club where the stand-up show was picked up the check, which was nice because it would have been a little steep. This is like a really fancy place, and everybody was ordering fucking triple appetizers and steaks and goddamn crab cakes. You know, those crab cakes will take you deep. We had a nice meal. Good time. And then the show was really fun. Really good time. So anyway, I'm back from that, getting ready to do some road dates. I plugged them up a little bit on the podcast, but I'll be coming to Bananas in Rutherford, New Jersey, August 6th through the 8th. Dr. Grins in Grand Rapids, Michigan. This is a new date, so get your tickets, August 19th through 21. Buffalo Rose in Golden, Colorado, which is, I guess, in the suburbs of Denver. That's August 26th through 28th. And then don't forget, Punchline, Sacramento, September 30th through October 2nd. That's going to be stand-up shows, plus it looks like we're going to do an edition of Sunday Papers Live on the stage. I think that's Saturday. We're not positive, but it looks like that's Saturday, like late afternoon, do the podcast. So look for those tickets soon. And then got a couple nice pieces of mail, all concerning my hemorrhoid. You know, you share about your vulnerabilities, and people really reach out and respond. So much love about my roid. Kale Elledge said, "Hey, Fitzdog, heard about your butt bubbles. First off, I've never had a hemorrhoid. Well, then that disqualifies you. However, my beautiful wife has gone through 2 pregnancies, and the only lasting issue was the booty nuggets. Fuck the witch hazel. That's fine if you're also using it with cream that includes lidocaine, like Recticare. There's a marketing department that comes up with names for hemorrhoidal cream, and they said Recticare is what we're going to go with. You get the rectum in there, people get it, and you get some care. Keep the tuck wipes in the fridge. Yeah, that's a nice idea. I'm going to do that. Cool those babies down. Because I got the bidet, and the bidet with the cold water coming out of it feels real nice on a roid, especially post-movement when things are getting a little hot back there. Cools it down, shrinks it around. Oh, yeah. Then a guy named Omar LKL said, I've been meaning to write for you for a while. The thing that stirred my lazy ass into action was hearing about your dealing with hemorrhoids. Had the same problem. Got it surgically repaired a couple years ago. Best decision of my entire life. Is that the best decision of your entire life? Are you married? I hope your wife listens to the podcast and she hears that dealing with a bump on your asshole was more significant than asking her to be your life partner. Or maybe your boss at that startup in Seattle where he's putting his skin on the line every day, riding on your fucking back, and your asshole's more important than that job. Maybe not the... Anyway, he feels compelled to spread the word about surgery. Get the surgery done. Hurts like hell once the anesthesia wears off. Worst pain I've ever endured, to be sure. I think you lost me on that line. Worst pain I've ever... Put it this way. The hemorrhoids are uncomfortable. They are not painful. So to trade that in for the worst pain you've ever endured, I think I'm going to stick with the butt bubbles for now. And then he ends it with, P.S. On the off chance you and your family ever want to visit Egypt, you have a dedicated guide waiting for you. Totally serious. Don't hesitate to reach out. Well, that's nice. Honey, kids, this is Omar. He gave me some advice on my asshole years ago, and we've just kept in touch ever since. It's just something we bonded over. You know, I talked about my dirty, swollen asshole, and it touched him. And he gave me some advice, and now we're best friends. All right, we're going to do some nicknames on the next episode. I want to get into the podcast, but first I want to read you a couple quick ads. My first sponsor, perhaps my favorite. I'm sorry, I have a lot of sponsors. I love you all, but I have had results with BetterHelp.com like nothing else. I was having a rough time coming out of the pandemic. I have seen therapists in the past. It's always been productive, but the process of getting one has always been difficult. And BetterHelp allows you get online. Maybe you're having a hard time in your relationship. Maybe you're not accomplishing some goals you have set aside for yourself. Whatever it is, anxiety, depression, get yourself some help, and you can afford it with BetterHelp.com. You get on there, and a licensed professional therapist will communicate with you within 48 hours of you filling out their very simple questionnaire. It's online. They take the information you give them, and they match you with somebody who has that skill set. It's not a crisis line. It's not self-help. It's professional counseling. So you can also get online. You can text. I text back and forth with my therapist during the week. That really helps. You don't get that with a regular therapist. It's so much more affordable. And a lot of people are having a hard time even finding therapists, depending on what city you live in. So you can do it online. You can do it over the phone. It's real easy, and they are recruiting additional counselors in all 50 states. So if you want to get on the other side of it, do it. So our podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. Our listeners get 10% off their first month of online therapy at BetterHelp.com/Fitzdog. Visit betterhelp.com/Fitzdog and join the over 1 million people who have taken charge of their mental health with the help of an experienced BetterHelp professional. Also, a sponsor that I love very much. These are the people that when your penis is misbehaving, not standing up, not showing up to work the way it needs to, not putting its fucking shoulder on the plow and getting it done, you need to get in touch with GetRoman.com. That's right. Look, again, we all go through stress and anxiety, and maybe you're getting older. Maybe you've always had issues with it, but Roman gets you a free online evaluation for ongoing care for ED, all from the comfort and privacy of your home. No sitting in an uncomfortable waiting room, not having to look a doctor in the eye. Maybe you're embarrassed about this and you don't want to look a doctor in the eye. Well, you can do it online. It's so much easier. And then it ships to your door in packaging that doesn't say anything about your penis. It can, if you ask them to. They'll put a picture of a penis on it so you don't miss it. But otherwise, it comes in a nondescript piece of packaging, free with a 2-day delivery. So I don't know where you can go wrong. It's a U.S. licensed healthcare professional, and they're going to find you a treatment plan that really works for you. It's straightforward. It's discreet. Go to GetRoman.com. Yeah, it's a new internet I just invented. GetRoman.com/Fitzdog and complete an online visit. Take care of your ED without leaving the home. GetRoman.com/Fitzdog. You'll get $15 off your first month. It's time to take care of your ED. And remember, get started today. You'll save $15 on your first order of ED treatment. GetRoman.com/Fitzdog. Okay, there we go. That's how we pay the electric bills and the producers and the people that we love. All right, let's get to it. My guest today, I love, dear friend, great dude, good comic, by the way, very good comic, good musician, multi-talented. He is the author of this new book here. It's called The History of Stand-Up, which we'll talk about at length. He's also appeared on every TV show. You'll recognize him when you see him. He was on The X-Files, The Larry Sanders Show, Curb Your Enthusiasm, Crashing, Silicon Valley, Legally Blonde, 50 First Dates, The 40-Year-Old Virgin, Step Brothers. I mean, it goes on and on. He's also a writer and a producer. We had a great chat. Here's my talk with my friend, Wayne Federman. I'm sitting in Fitzdog Studios. Wayne Federman is sitting in the Fetterman Funhouse.
Yep.
He's got a drum set. He's got movie posters on the wall, and he dressed appropriately for either a podcast or a softball game.
Yep, I love these kind of shirts. What is this shirt called with the... Is there a name for it? I don't know if anyone can see it, but it's...
It's got the 3/4 length arms.
Like a baseball tee or something. I think that's what it's called, like a baseball tee.
Were you part of the softball comedy league in New York?
Mm-hmm. It's comic strip. I played for the comic strip, sure.
I played for the comic strip also. We might have played at the same time. I'm not sure.
No, I think I think you're younger than I am, yep.
Yeah. That was the team. Well, I think on Seinfeld when they would play, it was, I think, the Improv team, right?
Yeah, he played on the Improv team, I believe. Yeah, I don't know if there was that's a good question. I think, no. He also played on the comic strip team. I've seen a photo of him and Larry Miller and that generation of comic strippers. But I heard the club just closed, finally.
The club?
The comic strip.
The comic strip closed?
All right. I heard it from Hiram Caston, so maybe not the best source.
Well, Richie died, the owner, so that would make sense. He just died, 6 months ago?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, well, that's a shame. There's a lost institution.
Well, it was, I know. It's interesting because that was the club that really championed me when I started.
Yeah.
And with the very eclectic gentleman by the name of Lucian Hold was running the whole thing back then. I'm sure you knew him.
The greatest.
Not to every comedian.
No, and he wasn't to me. When I first went there, when I first came down from Boston, I had recommendations from Louis C.K., Eddie Brill, and I forget who else. Mike Sweeney.
Right.
So 3 big hitters at the club.
Yeah,
and it still took me months to get seen. And then he saw me, and he had this booth that he sat in.
Yeah,
and it was
of course.
And it was like you walked in, and he was sitting there, and he'd be like, hello, Lucian. He'd go, hello, Greg. Very, demurred.
But, yeah, how else would you describe him to someone who didn't know him? Would it be like kind of a pretense about him, sort of a Connecticut sort of...
Yes. He was going for that. I mean, the truth is the guy was a Broadway dancer. That was his background. And so there was
didn't
something
know a thing about comedy.
Didn't know anything until he started. And he held himself with poise, and he spoke with a certain, like you said, gentility. But he was also, there was like a real true kindness to him. Once you got past the wall, I auditioned, he sat me down and he said, he goes, I don't know what to tell you. I've already got about 12 Irish guys from Boston right now.
Mm-hmm.
He goes, you can hang around if you want. You can do late night spots at 2 a.m. if you feel like it. But that's where we're at right now. And I was such a fucking dog back then. I was like a dog with a bone in his mouth. And if somebody gave me that much encouragement, I was there every night until 2 a.m. to get into that club. Because that club was the most important club in the city at the time.
Really? What year is this, are you saying?
This would have been in 91, 92.
Oh, yeah.
So there was Catch a Rising Star and there was Catch. Those were the big clubs. Catch a Rising Star and the Strip.
What about the Improv? That was still barely alive.
It wasn't important then.
Oh, interesting.
It had faded.
What about Paper Moon or Boston and all of that stuff?
They were there, but they weren't. That's not where the big acts were.
What about the stand-up New York? That had opened, right?
Stand-up New York, Kerry Hoffman was very kind to me. That was my first home when I came to the city.
Oh, great.
Yeah, he used to put me on a lot there.
And it's just so interesting because, again, the gatekeepers for yourself, myself and you, was an ex-Broadway dancer and a Sinatra impersonator. Right? Those were the people that could decide whether any of my dreams could possibly come true.
That's right. And a woman from Israel.
Oh, right. At the cellar. So it's really interesting. Like when I look back at it, because for some reason you would just think people in that position would be like, oh, comedy aficionados. But really the only one who was the guy who ran Pips, which was probably, did you ever do gigs out there?
Pips. Sure.
Did you ever meet the owner
Pips in
of that?
Brooklyn? It was in a kind of a tough part of Brooklyn, and it was next to a gym that was like a true Brooklyn meathead powerlifting gym.
It was in Sheepshead Bay.
Yeah.
It was in like the craziest place to have like a Greenwich Village style coffee house in this mobbed up area right on the docks. It was right on the docks.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was but anyway, the guy who started that was a comedian who knew Lenny Bruce, named Georgie Starr. His real name's George Schultz. So he was the first one that kind of started that room, and you probably knew his kid Seth, and I can't remember the other brother who sort of ran that room.
But that's where Dice started, right?
Oh yeah. Woody did that room.
Woody Allen did that room?
Woody Allen did Pips.
No shit.
Yeah. He was actually kind of one of the first to do multiple comedians on the same show.
Right.
But even before Bud did. It was on the weekends, and Brenner worked there. Yeah.
Right. You talk about that in the book. So just to back up for a second and give you a proper introduction, Wayne Federman, and I will have already introduced you in my intro.
I would assume. Yeah.
But the book that I just finished reading, The History of Stand-Up, which is extremely well-researched. It's very even. I think you cover things in a very even, balanced way. It's excellent. It's a good book if you want primer. I think Cliff Nesteroff described it in his notes is it's an ideal primer for anyone who wishes to understand how the art form came to be. And it's
a primer.
Cliff's book is like the fucking Old Testament. It's got everything.
It's the Talmud, I know.
Yeah,
I know.
but this is a really good read. It's really interesting for me, and I don't think just because I'm a comedian, but it's got great stories of the struggle, because that's the one thing that comes through as I read through the book was like every one of these comics, and I mean we're talking about you're going back to Artemus Ward, who you call the first stand-up comedian of all time, and that was in the 1800s.
Yep.
And going through, Will Rogers and Mark Twain, and then up into the Borscht Belt comics. And the struggle was they all found a new way to do it.
God damn it, you did read the book. Thank you. That's like the theme of the book. That's the theme of the book.
Yeah.
Damn it. Great work, Greg.
And what's great about that is, and it ends with the pandemic. Like literally the last chapter is how are comedians dealing with this new challenge? Because each era of comedy was a different challenge in terms of, was it going to be in burlesque houses? Was it going to be in houses where if you said the word sex, you were banned from every club in the country at once because they were all owned by two different guys?
Yeah.
And so what are the different challenges as you move through it? And now we're faced with this newest challenge, and it looks like we're going back into it. I hate to say, I can't foresee clubs not closing down again in the fall because this variant. So how have people dealt with that? How did Bo Burnham? I look at the two people that look. During the pandemic, we were all supposed to hit pause. It was supposed to be like in a car race, when they wave the yellow flag and nobody's allowed to pass each other.
Right.
You just stay in your lane. And then you had Bo Burnham and Sam Morril come out and put out these fucking specials that were just fantastic. I mean, not everybody's a fan of Bo's. I am. I think it was great, but it's controversial because it's not... Yeah. It is not by any means a straightforward stand-up special. It's a piece of art. And that's how he dealt with it. So I don't know where we're at now. I really don't.
I don't know. I mean, we're in this weird holding pattern because there's still shows at clubs, but now people are more masked than they were 3 weeks ago, right?
Right. Yeah, I was out at the Comedy Store last night, and everybody there has to have a vaccination card to get in.
Really?
Yeah.
Show us your cards.
Show us your card to get in, yeah. And then you got to wear a mask. And nobody had them on in the audience, but if you were walking around, you had to have the mask on. So I'm finding that, like, as far as doing stand-up now, I don't know how much you've been performing, but I find that people were really excited in March, April, May, when clubs started to like poke their heads out again.
And now.
People don't want to hear about the pandemic anymore on stage.
Right.
They don't want to hear the 20 new minutes that I fucking crafted during the pandemic. That's flushed. It's all new.
But some of it you can still weave in there. You can
a little bit.
Yeah, I would assume. That's I found the crowd still pretty enthusiastic to be out, but still like the tables are set up weird now, and it's just the whole thing is weird. It's just so I don't know. So, but I'm not worried about comedy. I'm not worried about stand-up comedy, and it's going to find a way. It might be, Bo Burnham style out of your house, and I'm sure you did a number of those Zoom shows, or maybe you didn't.
I did one.
You did one. I assume you were disgusted by it?
I didn't love it. And I decided not to do any more. But if we go back into the lockdown, I think I might, because what else are you going to do?
Well, but also your career, in a way, is partially bolstered by your internet, your podcast, which is an internet absolute, like a baby of the internet, right?
Right, absolutely.
So in a way, you're already, in a sense, a hybrid comedian, something that obviously David Brenner never had to deal with, or, had to do this show. And now how much of this is on old school radio and how much is just on streaming? Or is it all just streamed audio?
Oh, it's just streamed audio now.
Yeah,
there's no,
but you were part of radio.
I was on the Howard Stern channel for about 10 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
But now it's just him. His channels are literally only him. He used to have 20 shows.
Uh-huh.
And I don't know why, but they got rid of them all. I was the last one. I was the only other show besides him on the channel for about a year. And then then I was waiting for that fucking call. And then,
How did it come? How did it come?
It came from the fucking program director calling me from the airport on his way down to Florida.
Right.
It was like, yeah, thanks, man. Thanks. After 10 years. That's a nice way to hear it. On a cell phone.
But you knew it was coming. I
knew it was coming.
Yeah.
Can't complain. They treated me great. I had a great run over there. Howard was very supportive and the whole team. But wait, I want to get into the book because I thought about this interview because you're a good friend of mine, so it'd be easy for me to just sit here and shoot the shit with you. You're so easy to talk to. But I figured, why not walk through the book a little bit because...
Thank you.
There's so much in it that I'm sure you can lay in about these facts because I'm sure there's more to a lot of them because you kept it tight, I'm sure, for a reason. It's one of these books where you go like, I know that you probably had 1,000 pages of notes to write this.
Well, that was one of the little hints I put through right at the beginning that I wanted to be a brief and breezy look at stand-up.
Yeah.
Because almost every page of this book could be an entire book in itself.
Right.
And many pages are. I mean, I mentioned those books. But so it's just so much information, but I kind of wanted to contextualize it. And I love that you're talking about burlesque and vaudeville and all of them, those lecture guys. I feel like that's the best, in my opinion, so far for me, the best way to tell that story is through these venues that people had to work at, had to navigate. And with you were always comedy clubs, but right before you, there was coffee houses, and right before them, there was nightclub comics, and then, it go back and back and back. So
going way back, all right, we mentioned Artemus Ward. So he was the guy who, in the 1800s, was, what was his story?
His story is newspaper guy, Cleveland, Ohio, the Plain Dealer paper that still exists today. And at the time, he started writing comedy letters to the editor, sort of, that they printed in the paper. And at the time, you didn't have to pay if you wanted to use that in a rival paper or in a paper in New York or in anywhere in the country. So his little columns, Artemus Ward is a pen name. His real name is Charles Brown, believe it or not. And so he became famous as this humorist in the newspapers, right?
And he was playing a character.
Playing this character, Artemus Ward, misspelled words, that kind of thing. Very famous, like wildfire. Like that alone would have been an amazing story. But there were other funny writers at that time. So this is what happens. Insane. Of course, it starts with thievery and stand-up. He has to, he's a reporter, so he has to study the review, whatever, the plays that come in town and the minstrel show that comes in town. He's watching the minstrel show, and sure enough, one of the guys in the show, one of the comedians in the show, starts doing bits from one of his newspaper articles.
That's great.
And of course, the guy has no idea. And so he's at first he's infuriated. Then he's like, oh, this is awesome. It's getting laughs in person.
Yeah.
And then he thought, maybe I can rebrand myself or repurpose this material to the stage.
Right.
Like that was it. And all the people at the newspaper were like, you're an idiot. No one's going to want to see this. This is stupid. You got a good thing going here at the newspaper. He's like, no. So he pushed all his chips. He bought a book on public speaking. Uh-huh. Like he was that shy and weird dude.
Do you know the book? Because I could use a couple...
Right, I noticed you're very shy in front of an audience.
Yeah, well, I wonder in the 1800s what public speaking really was.
I know, that is a good question.
Politicians and
who else? Well, this is the thing. he caught, again, remember we were talking about these venues and things, there was something going on at that time besides slavery called the Lyceum movement, which was public speakers would go from town to town speaking in theaters and little opera houses and stuff on elevated topics. This is because there wasn't really a lot of public education.
Like a TED Talk.
100% correct.
No shit.
Instead of 20 minutes, it's an hour or something. And people would pay a quarter or something like that to hear someone talk about botany or the Revolutionary War or, Greek mythology or so. You could see that would be interesting to go in a theater. Yeah. So that's the... I call it the Falcon's Maze. It's a reference from War Games. But anyway, that was the key for him to get in. He's like, I think I want to go on that circuit and try to do comedy as Artemus Ward. Because the circuit was already there.
The circuit's there. The people are showing up. They're attentive. You could crush. Being funny. I mean, you and I know that as comedians. It's like, put me on the most serious show out there, and they're going to laugh the second they know I'm even trying to be funny.
And that's exactly what happened. He crushed right from the start. And his whole hook was, I think it was called Stories About the Baby, or I might be getting that wrong. Or no, Babes in the Wood. And his whole hook was he never got to the topic of the lecture. Yeah. He would go off on a tangent. He'd go maybe Kathy Griffin style, going off on a tangent of a tangent, then come back to it, and then I'll be right with you. And did it, and he was a deadpan comic. Right. He never laughed. He always looked up amused, like, what are you laughing at? That kind of thing. Right. And could get people to pay $1 a person for these lectures.
That's a lot of money back then.
Yeah, a lot of money.
No, I think I read he was making like $10,000.
Yeah, easy. Yeah. So he was making a lot of money, and he goes out to the West Coast, which there's not even states out there. You know what I mean? It's like, Oklahoma, it's Indian territory, and then you get to California, that kind of thing. And he does great. San Francisco is beyond his dreams. It's like, these are literate people. They love them. They pay more than $1 to see them. Yeah. So he becomes the guy of he figured this out. Yeah. But the best part of the story, to me, even, is he goes to Nevada to do a show. Who's there in the crowd?
Bobby Collins.
Young Bobby Collins and the amazing Wid. They were both in the back. They didn't pay to get in, but they knew the guy. So he, Samuel Clemens, not even Mark Twain yet.
Wow.
Young newspaper writer.
Yeah.
He knows he's a funny guy, right?
And he writes in characters as well.
Yes. Yeah. That was the thing at the time. Everyone had kind of like this pen name in a way. Yeah. Sort of like, I don't know. I almost feel like some comedians do, even today, manifest a persona that they sort of perform behind. Do you agree with that? Jim Gaffigan. I mean, obviously, Dice is a overt example, but even more subtle examples of I feel like even Chris Rock to an extent.
Sure.
Because he's like a shy, kind of nerdy. He's not a prowl the stage. When you see him on the stage like an animal, he's like, oh, who's this alpha dude? It's like, that's not really his, that skinny
No, he's a self-professed nerd,
Yes.
From Roosevelt, New York.
Yeah. So anyway, I always try to, and one of the things in my book is try to tie what was going on back then to today. So, and then Sam Clemens, he does his own comedy tours, Twain, when he gets famous with those books. And, suddenly the legend of Artemus Ward is dwarfed. Like nobody's heard of him compared to these Mark Twain lectures. Yeah. And so...
And Twain traveled the world, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he was in France. He was in Eastern Europe. He was in India.
Yep.
Crazy. I mean, I have one of his concert T-shirts, and I'm shocked at the amount of dates that guy did. But no Friday night late shows. He would not do a Friday night late show.
He knew those were the worst crowds, right?
Right.
Yeah. That's funny.
So
wait, what other merch do you have of Twain?
I've got the Coffee mugs.
Yeah.
The coffee mugs, and they're travel mugs, which is he was really ahead of his time with the travel
because
mug.
he was in. Yeah, there was no air travel. He was on a boat. You had to be. Yeah, you had a lot of spillage.
It's a lot of spillage on those wagons. I mean, they're not no fucking shocks at all.
No shock.
I had the pins, the Mark Twain pin. And then my great grandmother, he signed her tits, and we have a photograph of that.
You have an early.
Yeah.
That's so. So those are kind of the lecture era. Those were the two big of the lecture era. And by the way, up until 10 years ago, no one considered what they were doing stand-up comedy.
Yeah.
Even though it's almost the definition of it, standing in front of a stage alone, making people laugh with the intention, with the expectation of having laughs. Like the audience knows this is what it's all about.
And then, I'm sorry. Then you get into like the in ones. Is that what it's called? In one.
Yeah, that was in Vaudeville. Yeah.
So is that the next? Is that the next stage of stand up? Do you think?
Well, there's a number of little stages, but that's the next big stage, which was the Vaudeville circuit, which is what you talked about earlier. And I think people, even kids, kind of know the word vaudeville, right?
I think they don't. I think they don't.
Okay,
no.
All right. Well, anyway, this is before movies. This is before radio. This was the first big corporatized entertainment in America, where you had 2,000 theaters all across the United States, and then you would have these shows, variety shows, not connected in any way thematically, just like a juggler, a singer, an impressionist, a guy who did a bicycle act, a guy with a mule, a comedian, another singer, that kind of thing.
Right.
So that went...
And the comedian, you said, he would have to basically cover the set changes that were going on in the background.
That was one of the reasons that they used them, because they weren't called stand-ups at the time. They were called monologists, and sometimes comedy teams as well would be in front of the curtain. These were all in theaters, in front of a curtain, and they would have to perform while they were setting up for Fink's Mules or a plate spinning act or a magic act, or Harry Houdini's setting up a water tank or something.
Right.
Something like that in the back. And so they were valuable, not only, people like laughing, but they weren't like the big thing in the show was the comedian. It was like, oh, this was a great comedian. And then we would see a huge singer or maybe a big star from Europe, from the stage.
They were more like a warm-up comedian almost.
Yeah, they were more of the warm. But then, so a lot of comedians were in demand. They started doing these acts, but... what happened in the early 20s as comedians started emceeing the vaudeville show. Yeah. And that sort of changed everything, because there were comedians that were now could talk directly to the audience and sort of do callbacks and make fun of the act that just happened or pick up the crowd if they act bombed and thematically glue the whole stupid variety show together into a thing. So in a way, this comedian is sort of the star of this show, because he's walking us through this thing. And there was a guy, a very weird dude named Frank Fay, who was one of the most famous of these vaudeville MC comedians. And he played at the place called the Palace, which was... I don't know how to describe it. At the end of vaudeville was the biggest, most prestigious booking you could have. It would be the equivalent of now having a Netflix special. Okay. Or when my parents were growing up, being on the Ed Sullivan Show. Or
and
when
where
I was
was
a
it?
kid. It was in New York City. Right? This theater still exists, right on 47th Street and Broadway. And then, or doing the Carson when you were a kid. Remember that was you were you were like a made man. Yeah. If you did. And obviously everyone who did Carson didn't become Roseanne Barr, right?
No, it's funny what people click with that, because I know comedians that did Carson, guys like Wayne Cotter. Guys who did it 20 times and, had a career, did well, but didn't have that explosive, Dice Clay, Stephen Wright, Kevin Meaney. Like, they didn't have those moments where the world
remember
just
Meaney's
went.
Tonight Show?
I mean, his Tonight Show is the best one I've ever seen in my life.
It's one of the greatest things I've ever. It's so. First of all, I feel like Gaffigan does a version of Meaney.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, the mother's voice.
Yeah, he's basically narrating the stand-up set from a viewer in the audience, right?
Who's a woman.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
All right. So I love that guy. How well did you know Meaney?
He was in my wedding party. He was one of my groomsmen.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, we were very close. He was, I've talked about him on the show quite a bit.
Oh, you have? Okay, sorry.
But I don't want to dwell on it. But basically, when I was growing up, my dad belonged to a golf club, and Kevin was a waiter there. And I was a little kid hanging around the pool. And I'd be like, hey, Kevin, get me another Coke. And he'd be like, all right, Fitzsimmons. And he'd come down, and he would make everybody laugh. And then he took off. By the time I was 10 or something, he took off and went off and became a comedian. And then I met him again when I was in college. And he came to Boston, and I showed up to one of his shows, and he recognized me from when I was like 10 years old.
No.
I walk up, and I go, hi, Kevin, and he goes, Fitzsimmons, account number 236. And because that's what I would sign on the chit for my Coke. And we became fast friends, and he started to bring me on the road with him.
Was he one of the reasons you went into comedy?
No. But my father got Kevin on stage his first time because my father was in radio in New York.
Oh, that's right.
And he was friends with the guy that owned Catch a Rising Star. And so he set up Kevin with an audition at Catch a Rising Star, and he got him on for his first time.
Amazing.
So then Kevin used to bring me on the road with him, and he used to put me in stuff that he was in, like little TV shows, but more so just gave me a lot of advice and was supportive. And
give me a piece of advice that he gave you that still sticks with you.
Well, one that I ignored was never do an act that you couldn't do in front of your mother. And he and I disagreed about that a lot. But he never, if you think about his act, he never did anything that you couldn't do in front of your mother.
Right. And I'm gonna lean a little more that way, although I think there's some, but I'm a clean comic also.
Yeah,
so
But
that's just a personal choice. I remember once we had a great debate about this, about using the F word to punch up bits.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, there's no rules. It's just like, why wouldn't I try to get to 10 however way I can?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's great. Anyway, so we digress a little bit. We're in Vaudeville.
So we're talking about,
Frank Fay. And so anyway, Frank Fay and these other guys, Julius Tannen, there's a number of these kind of comics. They influenced the young comedians, the young Greg Fitzsimmons of the time, which are Bob Hope, Jack Benny, Milton Berle. Those are the kids like, well, how do I do this? How do I get in this? And so all of those guys come out of it. If you even read reviews of Jack Benny's act, a lot of the times they said, oh, he's obviously a Frank Fay type comedian.
Right.
And now no one's heard of Frank Fay outside of, the comedy nerd society that I belong to. And I think a lot of people know Jack Benny, although probably less today than unfortunately. But it doesn't matter.
And back then, if you did a routine and it was good, somebody else would just do that routine, like word for word somewhere else, right?
Sometimes it depends. Yes. But it wasn't, in other words, if you saw somebody do something at the Palace, you would go and do that in Des Moines, but you wouldn't do it in New York, or you might get in trouble for that.
Yeah, okay.
But you could tour on somebody else's, because there was numerous circuits, and there was there was a lot of borrowed material, and also a lot of writers would write acts for comedians. Yeah. So it wasn't always like George Carlin, like, what you're hearing is my thoughts. I'm the creator. I'm the dude. It was a little like singers. Do you remember, like Sinatra? He didn't write any songs, but he had Cole Porter writing songs. Like,
right. So one thing that I don't think you hit on very much in the book that comes around about this time is the sort of influence of Jewish comedians. and the immigrant Jews and why they were so formative in comedy in this country.
Yeah, because I think in a way it's a little overstated because there were, look, Bob Hope, who was the biggest comedian of the 30s and 40s, he's not Jewish. Fred Allen was a huge vaudeville star, huge radio star. He wasn't Jewish, but certainly there was a lot because, look, Jews were like these traveling groups, you know what I mean? In these little shtetls, living in these countries, always worried they were going to get killed or something like that or thrown out. And so when they came to America, which the foundation of our country is pursuit of happiness, it's right there in the document. Right there in the document. Like, oh, this is a fun... And free speech. Right there, founding documents. And so that's like a perfect fit for an immigrant Jew who's trying to make his way up in this country with the Protestants. Like, yeah, Jews know how to talk. We're educated. Education is a big part of the whole thing.
And they weren't being offered other jobs, really. It was that was the other thing is it was a job
they couldn't get into law schools and stuff like that. Right. So they're just like, oh my God, this is a perfect way to assimilate into this society. And so they took to it. But there was other immigrant groups as well. But yes, I think in particular they went after it in a super strong way. No question about it. And then there was summer resorts upstate New York. And New York is like the center of show business at that time, called the Borscht Belt, the Catskill Mountains. So when they predominantly wanted Jewish comedians performing for these Jewish people that came up there. But here's the crazy thing. All of these Jews, and I mentioned it in the book, for the most part, their main goal besides success in show business was assimilation. Uh-huh. They all, Jack Benny, that's not, that's Benny Kablowski. Even Lenny Bruce is Leonard Schneider. Jerry Lewis was Jerome Levitch. You know what I mean? They all de-Jewed their names so they could kind of fit into the society. Yeah. That's why Jackie Mason, who just died, was such an interesting guy who went against the grain on that. He's like, Jews are embarrassed by me. They're embarrassed by the way I talk.
Yeah.
It's really interesting.
Right. I mean, that was, he was like, who does he sound like? He sounds like Wendy Williams.
Yeah, he's a very ethnic character, and Jews were like Danny Kaye is a Jew, whatever that is, like a redheaded, as far away from the shtetl as you could be. Yeah, sophisticated guys, jackets and stuff. Right. So it's a really interesting cultural examination of how well they did. Luckily, a lot of it's based in New York, where a lot of Jews are on the Lower East Side, and the Borscht Belt, I think, added to it. But there's, obviously, there's non-Jewish.
There's a lot of Jews. There's a lot of Irish. A lot of the Irish are.
Oh my, huge. Yeah. What is that? What am I looking at?
That's the Irish harp.
Yeah, I don't know what that means.
I'm talking about how many Irish comedians there were coming up as well.
But what does the harp have to do with it?
Well, it's a symbol of Ireland.
A harp?
Yeah.
I thought it was a potato. What?
How do you think you get the potato? You got to play the harp. That's what they reward you with.
Wait a minute. That's true because Harpo Marx.
That's right.
Is based on Patsy Brannigan, an Irish character, right?
There you go. Wow.
I'm learning. I'm learning from you. All right. Yeah. And he played the harp. Oh, I wonder if that's the reason. Harp. I wonder if that's I never knew that. What? I always thought it was
a symbol of Ireland because the British, when they oppressed us, they took away all of our musical instruments. The harp.
What were the traditional instruments? Well, there was the electric bass guitar.
The electric bass guitar. There was the wah-wah pedal.
Yeah, I remember. Right. Yeah. Right.
No, there was they take away their fiddles and their harps and there was Irish drums and they were illegal, and then so they used to have these hidden sessions where they kept harps in basements because you could go to jail if they caught you with a harp. They would beat you and they would send you to jail for years. And so they kept them hidden all those years. Yeah.
I've never heard any. What years are we talking about here?
Well, I mean,
This is like
British,
the early 1800s?
No, further back. The British have occupied Ireland for like 800 years.
Is that what all the bombing was about when I was a kid?
Yeah, in the 70s, the Troubles. Yeah, we wanted our fucking harps back.
It was all about harps?
It was all about the harps.
That's what the IRA was about?
Yeah. And it was tough marching into battle.
That was their
how hard it is marching into battle with a harp? You know, the other guys just got a snare drum and a fife, and you got a fucking harp.
Exactly. Yeah. That's insane. I've never heard. So wait. Okay. I'm learning a lot. But anyway, yeah.
All right, so then we get to Aziz Ansari. No, just kidding. All right, so the first modern comedian, would you say Mort Saul? Is that the first monologist in the terms of observational?
It's so hard. Let me put it this way, because I would say an argument could be made that Mort Saul is the first of the new wave of comedians that seems to be modern. And this is after the word stand-up exists, so he's part of that. This is part of he would put out a record album. That still happens today, even though I feel like our Netflix specials or our streaming specials are just a version of it's like a video version of a comedy album. It's just somebody's act in a club, right? And
you write that there's a guy in like 1913, Joe Heyman, who put out an album that sold 1 million copies.
It's not an album, it was a single. There was no albums back then, but yes.
It's just a single. Yeah.
Going on the telephone, no question.
1 million copies in 1913. That's insane.
Yeah, no, it was a huge hit, but think about it. I want you just to kind of put your head in this space, because I know we're on like a streaming service and everyone's listening to computers and there's bit rates. But just think, like, this is when telephones first wasn't just for the rich people. It started like trickling down into middle class. You might have to share the phone with other people on your floor of your apartment building or something like that. So he does a bit about technology, which is the telephone. So that's a relatively new invention for most Americans. Yeah. So already it's like a cutting edge kind of bit, if you think about it. Then he comes up with the comedic premise, which is still used today, which is you're only going to hear half the conversation.
Right.
And you're going to have to fill in the other half with your own. Yeah. Like, did you get that bird I sent? Like, anyway, So that was it, Cohen on the telephone, trying to talk to his landlord on a phone. And that's all it was. Really simple, not in front of an audience, done in a studio.
Oh.
And people went nuts for it. And yeah.
But
there was other...
Before Bob Newhart, before Ellen DeGeneres, who did the same idea. Yeah.
Exactly.
Before Greg Fitzsimmons, who did it back in the...
Really?
Yeah, I had a bit about that.
What was it?
I was the operator at the Suzuki Samurai Hotline. Remember those cars that used to flip?
Quick sidebar?
Yeah.
When that car was introduced, I was part of the commercial campaign.
Get out of here!
Yep. But it's like my third commercial. It was, yeah.
Do you have survivor's guilt?
No. It was actually fun. Yeah, it was... I feel like that car got a little bit of a bad reputation. I know it flipped over. I know that was a problem. I know it had a weird center of gravity. But that was one cute little Jeep, right?
It was adorable. I bet you...
It was adorable.
At auction today, you would probably have to spend about $50,000 to get one of those things.
Oh, the Samurai, yeah. What a great name for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was nice.
It was to the song Born to Be Wild. It was like a montage commercial with 4 young people having fun, hanging off the back, pointing.
Yeah.
It's just great. Sorry to interrupt. So you did, so let me hear the hotline bit. What do you
honestly,
remember?
Somebody just reminded me the other night of a bit I did about Jesus walking on water. I did not remember a word of it, and it was my closing bit for a while. I have once I do a bit...
Yeah.
How many hours of
material? How many hours of material do you think you've generated in your life post Kevin Meaney? Post meeting Meaney.
If I were to do it all, not that many. Probably 7.
7. Okay.
7 hours maybe.
Interesting.
I've only got a few specials though.
Right.
Yeah. So let's get to this is the thing I love. Here's the thing I love is there was a time when Jerry Lewis, and there were other people that were playing these big theaters in like Times Square, and these theaters held like 3,000 people, and they watched movies.
3,000 to 6,000 people, yeah.
And before the movies, they would have comedians come out.
And musicians and stuff like that. Yeah.
And they would come out and they would perform, and depending on your contract and which theater it was, you might start with an 11 a.m. show.
Yep.
And then do another one at 2, and another one at 5, and another one at 8, and another one at midnight every day.
Yep.
But, which sounds hellish until you hear how much Jerry Lewis was making at the peak of his time there, which was how much?
Well, it was with Martin and Lewis. It wasn't just with Jerry Lewis, but they famously played the Paramount Theater and had like a Beatlemania type moment where the kids just stopped traffic on the street, the whole thing. I think they were making like $30,000 a week or something like that.
Yeah. Which you got to put in 1950s dollars.
Right. Yeah. Yes. It's crazy money today.
Yeah. It is, and at the same time, they're getting their Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours in, like the Beatles and Hamburg. You know, they're banging out just hour after hour of working on their act.
Yeah, they were quite. That was a phenom. I talk about them in the book a little bit, even though they're a comedy team, just because they represented like a complete, like vaudeville and all of that was gone. And this nightclub and presentation, these kind of comedians, I mean, this wasn't like a baggy pants comedian who looked stupid, or, it was a good-looking little Jewish kid and a super handsome, dripping with charisma, straight man, Dean Martin, and it was just, they killed it.
Yeah,
They just, and by the way, interesting fact about them, they were together 10 years to the day.
Is that right?
Yeah, July 46 to July 56.
Wow.
It's insane.
What's insane is that they both went on to have extremely successful careers on their own. That's so rare when a comedy team splits up.
Well, of course. Well, most comedy teams, yes. Well, give me another example of one where the comedy team split up and one guy went to... Because usually they both sort of languish.
Tenacious D.
Oh, all right, yeah.
Jack Black took off.
But they're still together, right? That's not like they...
Yeah, but I don't think that's Jack Black's
right.
bread and butter anymore.
No, you're correct. That's correct. But
I
was thinking of like the Smothers Brothers. It's not like one of those guys went nuts when they broke up. Right. The 20 times they broke up and then...
Yeah, Sonny and Cher. I think Cher did a little better than Sonny after the breakup.
I would say so.
There was Cato and Morin, who was a comedy team back in Boston. You probably never heard of them, but they were very funny. They fucking killed, but they were a little sticky. Fingers were a little sticky.
Really?
With the material, yeah.
I gotcha. So they were like a minstrel guy taking Artemus Ward material.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Okay.
So I went back.
So anyway, let me just say, these big presentation houses were like, they had the movie. By the way, there's one that still exists. It's called Radio City Music Hall.
Right.
Like that was one of those presentation houses.
Uh-huh.
Like, I don't know if you played. I haven't never done a show there, but I
did it once.
You did? Okay.
Yeah.
So now you have an idea what Martin and Lewis were going through in 1950 as far as playing a big cavernous theater.
Yeah.
How did you find it? Was it fun? Is it too big?
It was really fun. I was opening for Artie Lang, and it was me, and I think it might have been Nick DiPaolo and me, and so I get up, and I'm about halfway through my act, and it's magic. I went out before the show started, and I stood on the stage, and I looked up at the balconies, and and as a kid, if you grew up in New York, you go to Radio City Music Hall, and you see the Rockettes at the Christmas show, and you see movies there that premiere. And so I'm standing on that stage looking around, and I've just got chills. So I go out, and they're fucking great because they're Howard Stern fans. So they're just full of positive energy. And then halfway through my set, Howard Stern enters the building from the back, and he walks down to his seat in the 10th row, center. And so, like, the place erupts. Like, I'm in the middle of a joke, and you just hear, oh, hey now. Everybody's yelling, hey now. And so he sits down, and everybody comes. And it was actually an opportunity that makes or breaks you as a comedian, where you can either get defeated by that, or you can make fun of it. So I kind of made fun of myself and Artie, and it worked, and it was fine. But yeah, it was a thrill. It was a thrill.
Well, I know you don't want to talk about yourself, but can I ask you a quick question? Because again, I just saw that clip of you on Tough Crowd, and it always seems like in those kind of scenarios where there's unforeseen or there's incoming at you, you seem to have like a calmness about you to handle those situations and just be ready for like 6 rat-tat-tat retorts. Do you know what I'm talking about? As opposed to, let me put it this way. You don't usually seem rattled. And I've seen it a number of times where you're just like, oh, this is what's happening? Is that just a fighter instinct of yours? Or what do you think that is?
I think so. I think I grew up in a family that was, Bronx Irish. Everybody had a real attitude. Everybody was sarcastic. It was a lot of ball busting. And so every night at dinner was everybody shitting on each other. And my father was good at it, and my mother was good at it. And so it was coming from all directions. And so you had to never look hurt, even though sometimes it actually did hurt.
Of course,
my father went far. He was he was a ball buster before he was a father. Like,
oh no.
The comedy was more important to him than I may wreck my child's psyche, who's only 7. Like, for instance, my sister, she was about 6 years old, and she was in a little dance class. And dancing at that age is a lot of leaps. It's a lot of running, and you do a leap. And so we're at the table, and my father goes, well, let's see you do a leap. And so she leaves the kitchen, and she walks all the way down the hallway, and then she yells, are you ready? And we say, yeah, we're ready. She's like, okay, here I come. We're like, okay, do it. And she comes running, and as she gets to the kitchen, my father points out the window, and he goes, look at that dead bird. And we all look out the window, and we miss her big jump. And we did it to her, 4 or 5 times in a row. We kept saying, no, this time we're really good. Like, that was what you faced as a child who really did want your family to look at you do your dance leap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay. Let me ask you a follow-up, and then we'll get back to the history of stand-up. Have you ever been in a situation where you're like, oh, shit, I got rattled and I couldn't, and I just got too emotional and it was too much for me, like, on stage? You're just like, oh, fuck, this is not, there's no way I can't do this.
I had a swarm of flying ants explode from the wall at the Go Bananas in Cincinnati one time, and it was the middle of the show, and they explode. I don't know if you know about, I think they were flying ants, but like the nest exploded, and a swarm just infiltrated the crowd, and people were diving for cover, and they were screaming, and I started to try to make it funny, and then they got to the stage, and I freaked, and it's the only time I've ever walked off stage in my life.
Well, yeah. But
that was an act of God.
Yeah, that's not some lady saying, you're short or something. Wow.
No, you kind of have no choice. It's like being a cop. But you've seen a police officer.
You're telling me you've never seen a comedian who a crowd breaks them? You've never seen that?
I've seen it.
That's what I'm saying. I've never seen it with you, is the point I was saying.
Oh, well, thank you. I think it did come from my kitchen table.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I think if you started telling a story at my kitchen table and you were boring people, the running joke was they would put their elbow on the edge of the table and then it would slip.
Yeah. That's funny.
Yeah. And it hurt.
By the way, I just as a side note before we get back, and we can tie this in, Go Bananas. I've never played that club. That's the name of it?
Go Bananas. Cincinnati, Ohio.
I love it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I got some good gigs coming up. I'm playing, my next few gigs are at I'm going to Bananas in New Jersey.
Not Go Bananas, just old school Bananas.
Just Banana. You know Bananas in New Jersey.
Yeah.
And then I'm playing. There's some other silly names. They're always silly names.
Right. I get to that in the book. I do a whole list.
Oh yeah. That's right.
That's right. Crazy during the comedy boom when that all started. So we're at kind of presentation houses, and also at this time, I know we're sort of skipping over radio a little bit, is nightclubs, which are kind of the precursor to the smaller nightclubs, which are the precursor to comedy clubs, which is where you're going to be playing, which is Bananas. Those are small, like little nightclubs is basically what they are. They just use comics instead of a variety act. But yeah, nightclubs really were an interesting time, different than vaudeville. You could do more adult material in there. Didn't have to worry about getting fired or getting a blue envelope or any of that crap that happened.
Right.
In vaudeville.
Well, and that's funny. Like when people say work blue or blue material, you mentioned in the book, it's like you would literally get a blue envelope from the manager of the theater telling you what you can't say that you said in your show.
Right. You did want to get a blue envelope.
So with these nightclubs, though, it's dirtier, but it's still not cursing.
No, it's still not MF compound word or anything like that at that point.
Yeah.
Although there is kind of like a little bit in more the ethnic clubs. I think that's starting to happen a little bit more.
And this is like the 40s?
Post-war. I mean, the nightclub starts after the end of Prohibition, but really booms when all of that money, post-war America, nightlife. As I said, the show times for the Copacabana were 8, 12, and 2 a.m.
Yeah.
Those were the show times. And then in Atlantic City, there were 8, 12, 2, and 4 a.m.
Damn.
Don Rickles, when he played Vegas in the 50s, was, again, it's a lounge comedian, midnight 3 and 5 a.m.
Wow.
This is nightlife.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's not the late show Friday. That's the early show Saturday.
Yeah. They called it a breakfast show, the 5, 10 a.m. breakfast show. So they'd have people that were working those other shows and musicians. They would come and get breakfast and watch Rickles.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just mind-blowing, right?
Yeah.
So that was sort of an example of like the nightclub era was like, okay.
Yeah.
And women would be drinking, and it was like, and it was,
Yeah.
But within this, and I have a great quote from Jackie Gleason, it was all very like punch jokes, punchlines, great jokes, this thing, no social satire at all, really.
Right.
For the most part. And then, like you said earlier, out of this, there's littler clubs that are the precursor to comedy clubs. There's one in New York and in San Francisco called the Hungry Eye.
The Hungry Eye.
Yeah, that's very important. Guess what? In the basement, now you got to go down in the basement. Brick wall, no fancy. When you think of a nightclub, fancy girls, cigarette girls, none of that crap. Just like we want to really hear what this person has to say, and that's where Mort Saul started. And then I feel like that is sort of the birth of all of the modern stand-up. Do you disagree
was Mort Saul, and then Dick Gregory, and who's
and
the
then
guy?
Bob Newhart to an extent, and Nichols and May was a comedy team that was way different than what Martin and Lewis were doing.
There's another team that broke up and one did better than the other. Mike Nichols went on to be much more successful than Elaine May.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Very good.
Now, if the Sklar brothers break up, will Jason or Randy take off? I'm not sure. I think they'll both do okay.
I got my money on Jason.
I like Randy.
So that was a real interesting kind of transit. And those little rooms were more like jazz combos would play in there and stuff like Dave Brubeck or something like that.
And there was heroin. There was heroin in those days.
Yeah, that's how Lenny Bruce got hooked on heroin, was from the band. That's exactly right. Yeah, the band guys loved like jazz and heroin.
What is it with jazz and heroin?
I don't know. Is it that it's so nobody likes the music and they're just upset about it?
We're doing genius up here. He's playing 16th notes.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
You don't understand the syncopation to play in some 7/16 time. Like, well, you may have to put something in your arm to make you feel better because you're not going to get approval from this crowd.
You may get laid, but that's just because they want the heroin.
Right.
All right, so we got all that, and then let's cut to modern comedy. So the first comedy club, and it can be debated because, as you said, Pips was the first one to really do a showcase of comedians that were all doing like 15
just so you know, the idea of that was bonkers.
Yeah.
I just didn't think people would want it. Like, it seemed like it would step on the person that was in front of you, and it was like the same thing. And so that it even hit is crazy.
Yeah.
Bananas.
But then the first legit club that had legs was the Improv in Manhattan.
Yeah.
And that's Bud Friedman and his lovely wife, Silver.
Yes.
And they start this club, and it starts off as a music club and a place for Broadway people to finish their shows and then come have a drink and perform for each other. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, a comedian comes in named...
Okay, why can't I think of his name right now? I'll think of it in a second. I know I wrote it down. For some reason, I'm blanking on his name, but I'll think of it in a second. Okay. But anyway, he's like a Sullivan-era comedian. Yeah. And he comes in and does pretty well at the Improv, and then comes back, and he was hanging out with Richard Pryor, and there was a guy named Ron Carey, and they used to do like little improvs up there. And then Dave Astor. I knew it was in my brain somewhere. And so that was slowly, as I was describing another, like locusts, they took over this music room. Yeah. And one of the big reasons was because Bud was into it. Like, he really liked stand-up, and people started coming there. And then Rodney, who was a nightclub comic, he became the house MC. And then the big breakout star, the first one was Robert Klein. I don't know if you like him, but certainly
I love Robert Klein.
Oh,
Robert
you do?
Klein
All right, so
is another... Well, I've heard Robert Klein is being described as the first postmodern comedian.
Oh, yeah. He was the first comedy... Yeah, because Mort Sahl was a coffee house comedian. And, but this was... Klein worked in comedy clubs.
Yeah, he was cool.
And he also set the template of like, I'm going to talk about high school. You know, I'm going to like that kind of stuff.
Yeah, personal stuff.
Yeah. And very middle class stuff. Yeah. Not that much different than your life. Oh, right. I went to elementary school. I did the thing. Right. Went to college. I just love Klein so much. And so you can connect with Klein as the way you wouldn't be able to connect with, let's say, I don't know, Fred Allen or any of those vaudeville guys. Yeah. So that's the start of it. And then in 72, the Comedy Store opens. You just performed there last night. Yeah. Still around, right?
Yeah.
Started in 72. Strong. Yeah. What year is it now? 2021?
Yeah. So they've got the 50th anniversary coming up next year.
Yeah. So,
crazy. I hope they stay open.
They will.
Well, if there's another pandemic that shuts it down, I
don't know.
The problem is like Pauly Shore owns the club with his brothers, and is there a sister? I'm not sure.
Yeah, there is a sister.
So they're sitting on a piece of real estate in Hollywood that is worth a boatload of money. It's on the prime spot of the Sunset Strip, and it's a lot of land. And I always wonder, like, if they want to just go like, hey, why are we sweating out receipts and 2-drink minimums when we could just sell this to a hotel and walk away with $50 million or something? So hopefully they keep it. Who knows?
Yeah. I hope so. I hope so also. But it's just amazing that it's been around that long and, you're still connected to it. This is, early comedy club.
Right.
So... and then early ran by a comedian and then he walked away from it.
Sammy Shore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you know him
ran
at all?
Away from it. Not at all. But the story goes, he was like Bud and his wife. The store was created by a married couple and who split up. And in both cases, the woman kept the club.
Yeah, and there was, I think Rudy DeLuca is also involved with the start of that club. But, when I first moved to Los Angeles, Sammy Shore ran a room in Marina Del Rey called Sammy's by the Shore.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Again, I think you can figure out the comedy math on that one.
Yeah.
And he used to book comedians, and then he's just like, I don't want to book this anymore. And guess who he hires to book the comics?
Zoe Friedman.
Judd Apatow.
No way.
Yeah. Judd booked Sammy's by the Shore.
Oh, that's hilarious. And
That's
that
like
was
a
what, in like the
20-year.
80s?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. This is like 87, maybe 88.
Damn.
Sammy's
That's wild.
Wild, right?
Yeah, yeah. That's insane.
Yeah.
All right, so now you've got stand-up comedy clubs, and people are pretty well versed with, like, you know, what happens next. But in terms of, we talked at the beginning about the new challenges. Each of these comedians we've talked about has faced, whether it's performing in movie theaters in Times Square or performing in rooms where you get a blue envelope, there was the challenges. And now the challenges that are facing these comics are suddenly that there's a glut of comedians. And how do you stand out? So
well,
in the
I think
80s,
there's always been a glut of comedians, in my opinion.
yeah.
I mean, obviously, there's more now than there. I think there is more now, but let's call it a greater glut of
Which,
comedians.
by the way, you left out. Really, the first stand-up comedian was the court jester, and I think I think we should go back to that. If we have so many comedians, the stakes are not high. There's not enough skin in the game. Bombing isn't that bad, but getting beheaded by the king because you had a bad show, those are some high stakes.
Right. And sometimes these guys would have a really good show, but their closer didn't hit.
That's
Done.
right. It's all the king remembers is the closer.
That's all he remembers,
Yeah.
the closer. It was like,
Right.
what about all of the other stuff I
Yeah.
was doing about the plague?
know,
Yeah. Tough crowd.
Yeah.
So, no, of course. And I say that at the beginning of the book. There is no first. I mean, if you look at all of those old societies and psychology, you know, there's always been like an element of comedy in Japan and Native American culture and old Mexican culture. Like,
was there Native American comedy?
Mm-hmm.
No shit.
Yeah. Before Charlie Hill and all of those guys. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so it's just part of human nature, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a bigger philosophical question than what my book looks at.
Yeah.
Of just like, what are human beings and what it means to tickle someone's brain so they involuntarily laugh. Whether it's like tripping on a stick or, you know, I don't know, or pretending to burn your hand in a fire. I don't know what the old bits were, you know, but... And I could see somebody laughing at that.
But yeah, I mean, it really does. A lot of it comes down to, I mean, if you look at it from a societal point of view, of like somebody who can hold a mirror up and somebody who can make you feel like you're part of the group that's laughing at the other group.
Yeah.
You know,
no question. You're connected in a way that probably a wolf wouldn't be able to make another wolf laugh by pretending to drink water and it tastes bad, right?
Yeah, right.
They wouldn't do a bit like that.
No.
They're like, we're drinking water and then we're killing and then we're sleeping and then we're
Yeah. What's the guy with the bad water bit? You know, he's never going to get laid. That guy's the last guy to get laid in all of our group.
The wolf
in our whole pack.
But that would be funny if a wolf did a thing, taste and then spit it out like it's terrible. I'm trying to think what other bits a wolf could do.
Yeah.
It's really, I know we're running out of time, but it's so fun talking to you about this. I love that you were into it so much. I'm really touched.
Well,
really touched.
No, it was a great effort, and I know that you teach comedy at USC, right?
Yeah, unfortunately, that is true. Yes.
Oh, you don't enjoy it?
No, I do enjoy it, but I do feel like there is a little bit of a stigma for anyone who kind of teaches a comedy class. But I'm teaching more history of stand-up than like stand-up performance.
Right. Well, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah, the teaching of the history of it. I mean, at USC, we're not talking about teaching a class at Montgomery Community College of how to put a red nose on. I mean, you're at fucking USC, one of the great, communication schools in the country. And now you've got a book that you can, I mean, if you're going to make tenure, you got to be published, right?
Publish or perish.
That's it. At Podcast or Perish. And you've also now podcasted about it.
Yeah, I know. I'm talking a lot about it. We'll see how long this arc can last of me talking about stand-up history. But yeah,
Well, I think that
I'm fascinated by it. I am really, and you know me, like I like to this day, and I'm not going to say the day because I don't know when this is going to drop, but we're in the middle part of 2021. I like the highest level of stand-up with Chappelle or any of those guys, Mulaney, all of those guys, Burr, right down to open micers. Like I love the whole arc of it.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated by it. I just think it's just a beautiful human experience.
Yeah, and there's a club here in LA called the West Side Comedy Theater, which is just this little 50-seat room. It could be the Hungry Eye. And it's just a place where you can go and try shit out, and they get great comics there. And I've been going early to my spots because the guy that books it, Chris, does a great job of finding young talent that I hadn't seen before. Like I saw this guy Wayne Moses on recently, and so I liked him so much I had him on my podcast. And
tell me about him a little bit. Tell me.
Well, he grew up in a doomsday cult, and his parents were cult members, and so he lived in a bus for the first 10 years of his life, and he to this day has never been to school. He never went to school. And so does he have
a GED or anything like that?
No. I don't know how he got away with it, but he did. And he has this severe dyslexia, so he barely reads. He can't really read. And so his act is extremely in the moment. He gets off the stage, and he's got a great energy, and he's got a great mind. But my point is, I get so excited about discovering somebody new like that who's really and you see their heart is in it, and when you see them on stage, you see you're seeing somebody start to find their confidence, and somebody who has, or this guy has found his confidence and is, so I feel the same way. I'm just as excited about seeing somebody new as somebody else.
That warms my heart. That really warms my heart. Can I ask you a quick question about that term, find your confidence?
Yeah.
How important do you, beyond the material and I guess the delivery would be affected by your confidence, but is confidence in stand-up?
I think it's everything.
Everything.
I think it's everything. I mean, there's comics today that are selling out theaters, and I watch them and I go, from a craftsman's point of view, I don't see a lot going on. From a character point of view, I don't see anything that interesting going on. But there's a confidence and there's a groundedness, and people are connecting to it, and they're connecting to somebody being their friend, and somebody being on stage having the confidence to make 3,000 people feel like that person is their friend.
That's awesome. That's interesting. All right.
And I'm not dismissing.
No, I know.
Diminishing those people, but the confidence
it's part of it.
Can make you overlook a lot of other stuff. And I know when my confidence, because my confidence ebbs and flows, and I know I know when it's peaking. I go on stage and I can and it's effortless, and it's like playing jazz, and I feel like I can do anything. And when my confidence is low, I'll be driving to the club that night and just thinking, how am I going to fake my way through this next 15 minutes? And I listen to my tape on the way home, and my voice is tight. It's not fluctuating.
You can hear it?
I can hear the tight. And again,
it's that's like a dagger when I can hear that in my voice.
Yeah. And I hear my choices on the tape, and I go, "Why did you make that choice? That was a fear-based choice that you made there."
Oh, okay, great! And, this is so fascinating to me.
And you don't know, and you can't chase confidence. That's the thing. It's like, it comes in waves, and you just have to wait for it to come back again. And when it does, it's like riding a wave. It's like fucking getting on that surfboard and going I got it. You paddle hard, you get up, and you have a nice ride. And then the next few shows, you're fucking paddling against breaking waves that are crashing on your head, and you're just trying to get back out again.
Jeez, I didn't know this was going to get so dark at the end here.
Yeah, it is dark.
A guy drowning in the undertow of an ocean.
Can you tell if I'm in the jazz phase or the paddling out phase right now?
I don't know. Is heroin next? What's happening?
Yeah, I could try a little bit. Maybe they'll help me get back out there.
Then you are in the jazz phase.
Yeah, I'm in the jazz phase.
Okay.
All right, listen. Wayne Federman, congratulations on your book. It's called The History of Stand-Up. It's available where?
You can, just Amazon is like the
Go
best
to
place
Amazon. Go to Amazon and get it.
Yeah.
It's a great read. We only touched on.
It's a primer. It's a primer.
It's a primer, but it's an overview also. It really gets you cover all of it, and it's got a nice build to the end, and I really loved it, and I love you. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks, Greg, so much. I love you, brother. So anyway, great. All right, you're welcome.
Good.
I'm terrible with emotion.
Oh, that's. All right. Well, listen. Catch Wayne. Go to his website, which is WayneFetterman.com. Federman.
And at Fetterman on Twitter.
Yeah, you got all the good handles for yourself. You got your last name. That was pretty smooth.
Well, I got in early. Not 2006, but I got in pretty early.
Yeah, nice.
2008, I think. All right. Do I hit leave meeting? What do I do?
Leave meeting.